Microjig, maker of the gripper. Work safer, work smarter.
Get notified when new videos are released by clicking the bell button below. I'm going to kick off part 3 by working on the stiles for the bed. Now originally I was going to have the stiles be thinner than the rails to create sort of a shadow line between the rails and the stiles. But I thought about this some more and I decided to just go ahead and make these stiles the same thickness as the rails. Now if you downloaded the SketchUp file for the bed, you would have seen that. Oh, and by the way, the SketchUp file for the bed is now available to everybody. Originally, the SketchUp file was only available to certain Patreon members, but I opened it up to everybody. Couple more passes should flatten this board nicely. Just a little bit of color right over here. So one more pass and that'll definitely do it for this board. Now that I have a flat face on the lumber for the stiles and its dimension to thickness, I can get a nice square edge on one side at the joiner and then I'll cut it to its final width. For the joinery for the stiles to the rails, I'm going to use floating tenons again. And to make the end grain mortises and all the stiles, I'm going to use my horizontal mortiser. Now if I don't move the height of the bit in the mortiser, I should end up with the rail and the stile flush with each other. Nice and flush. Now I need to make a groove along the inside of the stiles and the tops of the rails going all the way around to receive the panel, which I'll make later by resawing some cherry. Because my rails and stiles are so thick, I'm not going to put the groove for the panel exactly in the center of the headboard. It's going to be offset towards the front of the headboard by 1/2 inch. So the groove is going to start 1/2 inch back from the front face of the headboard. The groove for the panel in the top and bottom rail is going to need to start and stop before the groove reaches the mortises for the stiles. So I'm going to drop these pieces onto the spinning bit, and then when it reaches the end of the groove, I'm just going to turn off the router. For the panel, I'm going to resaw a piece of cherry that's just a little bit over 1 inch thick. So the board that I used for this book match was wider than the capacity of my joiner. So I had to overhang my joiner by a little bit, and that little bit of extra material I just got with a hand plane. I didn't go into detail when I was doing this because you guys have seen me do this a few times before, and I think in fact I did it on the very last video. So the next thing I'm gonna do is get a nice straight edge on both of these mating surfaces, and then I'll glue these halves of the book match together. I've got my book match panel out of the clamps, and a few passes through the drum sander will clean it up. I'm gonna rip the panel to its final width now, and because I wanna keep the line of symmetry in the center from the book match, I'm gonna take the same amount of material off from each side. My panel is a little bit thicker than 1/4 inch, and the grooves that I use to receive the panel are 1/4 inch wide. So I'm going to use a rabbiting bit at the router table, and I'm going to make a rabbet all the way around the back side of the panel so that I can get the edges of the panel down to 1/4 inch. I just did a dry assembly of the panel inside the frame, and everything looks good. It's a nice fit. So the next thing I'm gonna do is curve this top rail, and I'll do that at the bandsaw after I trace out a nice curve. So after using the oscillating spindle sander, I'm going to smooth this curve a little bit more by using a flexible sanding strip, which is nothing more than a piece of sandpaper adhered to a piece of flexible scrap wood. And I have the rail clamped in my DIY twin screw vise. Now this is a project that I made several years ago, and it's something that I use all the time. And if you go to my website, I have plans available for a small fee. At the router table, I'm going to use a 45-degree chamfer bit to put a chamfer on the tops of all the posts on all 4 sides. And I'm going to back up the cut with a piece of scrap wood to prevent chip out. Before I glue the footboard and the headboard together, I'm going to pre-finish all the pieces, and I'm going to finish it with General Finishes Armor Seal. Now I've used this finish before and I really like it, so that's what I'm going to use for this bed.